Andrea, good to see you. Early years is something you've campaigned on since the moment you entered Parliament back in 2010. I remember it well. Why is it so important to you?
Well, actually, Gloria, I campaigned on it with many of your colleagues, so it's very important to lots of MPs across the House. I mean, I first got involved with it back in 1997, just a couple of years after my first child was born, and I'd had postnatal depression myself. So when I was asked to get involved with a charity that helps families who are struggling to form a bond with their baby because they are depressed, really struggling with a childbirth experience or whatever it is, I took it on, became chairman of it, absolutely loved it. And that is now, almost 25 years ago. So yeah, it's been a long-standing passion of mine, is to really improve the support that families get in that critical early period.
Can I ask you, how long did you have postnatal depression?
A really short time, and yes, it's fine to ask. I mean, that son is now 26. And it was a short period of time, but it was just actually for me, very specifically, because I was working in a bank. I'd just been made a senior executive. I was just like, I can have this baby. It's just going to be, life as usual. I'll just carry on with my career. And of course, then I stopped work 2 weeks before he was born, and I'd been sort of doing 12-hour days. And then the deal was that I would go back after 10 weeks because they needed me, and it was all career. And then this baby comes along, and it was a horrific birth experience, very unexpected. So you kind of deal with the misery of a horrible birth experience. And then, what's this? So it was quite short-lived, mainly because I went back to work, but I did have amazing support from family and also a superb health visitor. So I could see, actually, this is my lifeline, and it actually changed my priorities becoming a parent. And it really gave me a passion for making it better for other people.
And you recently convened a debate in Parliament about kinship care for babies. Just explain kinship.
Yeah, so essentially what happens to a lot of families who really cannot look after a baby or a child for, reasons of a tragic death, or perhaps incarceration of one or both parents, or drug addictions, or all sorts of, mental health problems, etc., etc. The reasons why children get taken away. And obviously, very often, in the first instance, that baby or child will be looking for a family member, very often grandparents, but it could be an uncle or an aunt or an older sibling who will care for them. And local authorities do seek that kind of kinship care arrangement. And the reason for holding this debate is actually triggered by a constituent who came to see me, who himself and his wife were becoming kinship carers for their little niece, 8 months old at the time. And his mum had been looking after this baby and would really struggled. She was in her 60s and struggling to cope with a new baby. So they took on the care of this baby. And what he'd come to see me about was the fact that his employer and his wife's employer, both working full time, neither of them would allow them anything other than unpaid leave. Now, they had 2 older children anyway, so they couldn't just afford to both stop working, but they had this baby who'd obviously been through some very difficult experiences, and they were trying to form a bond, adding to their family, get the older children to love this new arrival, and yet there was nothing for them. So I just found that completely unjust. If they'd been fostering, if they'd been adopting, and of course, if they'd had their own baby, then you have statutory support. You've got maternity leave, paternity leave. Your employer will be required to support you financially for a while. But with kinship care, nothing. So that's why I held the debate, was to argue that, first of all, if you are taking on kinship care for a baby, you should have the same rights to maternity, paternity leave. And in particular, if you are an employer, you should be treating this couple or this new carer as somebody who's just had a baby.
What are your chances of getting a change in law on this? You're in the governing party, very senior member of it, former cabinet minister. Are you going to get the government to listen?
Well, I really hope so. And actually, previously I was Secretary of State for Business, Energy and Industrial Strategy, and working on an employment rights bill that was looking at a whole mixture of different changes to employment law. And one of them that I was pressing, and this was before the pandemic, was flexible workers standard. Now, obviously, since the pandemic, by default, everybody's working flexibly. But actually, before the pandemic, it was something that people were a bit like, well, why would employers want to do that? But actually, there's a lot of evidence that says not only would it be great for families to be able to, perhaps work from 10 o'clock on a Monday so that you can take your kids to school, maybe, work until Friday at 3 because then you can pick them up once a week and do the rest of the week in between, or indeed far more flexibly, because it's good for the employer, because that employee is now much more motivated, much more satisfied with the job. There's evidence that productivity, in fact, increases. And also, of course, trying to get many women back into the workplace, it means that they would apply for jobs. So if you actually could apply for a job, Tuesday to Saturday or afternoons only, that does give you the chance to actually take on many more opportunities.
How do you feel when you hear government ministers saying, get back to the office, everybody then?
I certainly think there's a balance. I am not a fan of this constant virtual working. I think it's a big problem if everybody's at home, because those conversations around the coffee machine and, certainly for my two sons who are now working in their first or second jobs, they've really missed that sort of camaraderie of a team meeting where you've got a whiteboard and you're all, working together on a project. That cannot be replaced with just virtual working. So it is the flexibility of work that's the priority, not the exclusive working from home, never going back to the office again.
Do you think having more women in politics has made these conversations easier to have?
Definitely. It's really interesting for me when I first came into politics. I was sort of talking about babies a lot and people would be like, oh, banging on about babies. But now actually those voices are drowned out by the successive new intakes, and particularly the number of new women MPs who are like, yes, exactly. That's what we need to be doing. We need to enable women and men, of course, because so many men would absolutely love to play much more of a role in their babies and children's lives than they're able to now, because of the fact that 9 to 5, 5 days a week, jacket on the back of the chair type of approach that we've had in the past. So actually more women in politics has helped men as well to become empowered to be more hands-on as dads.
Babies in the chamber, how do you feel?
Not so keen, I think going through the lobby is absolutely fine. But actually, I kind of remember working in a bank. I would not have been taking my babies into the office. And, there's a time and a place. I don't think you just, because you want to support families to be more hands-on, that you should therefore just say, oh yeah, let's just, start taking babies everywhere we go and let everybody else put up with it. I don't agree with that. On the other hand, I am a huge fan of breastfeeding. It's incredibly good for baby's health, for mum's health, for the bonding process, for, reducing obesity and later childhood illnesses and so on. And so I actually do think that in our society more generally, we need to be much more tolerant to women breastfeeding in public places.
Andrea Leadsom, fascinating. Brilliant interview. So
Thanks,
pleased that we did
Gloria.
it. Thank you.
Great to see you.
Thank you.